The cold has settled into the blankets, and it will not leave. It is in the wool, in the damp wood of the bed, in the marrow of a body too tired to shiver. Outside the window, the northern frontier is gray and waking, and underneath all of it, low and wet and slow, there is the sound of a man breathing. This is Marcus Aurelius on the morning of the 17th of March, 180. By the time the sun sets, he will be dead, not in a marble palace, not in battle, but of plague, in a cold camp on the edge of the empire. And the notebook on his table will outlive Rome itself. Everything you have been told about this man is incomplete. Today, we decode the real one. For 19 years, this man had ruled the largest empire the world had ever assembled. He was Marcus Aurelius, the last of the 5 emperors Rome would later call good. He stood at the end of a long run of competent rule. He had not wanted a soldier's life, yet for nearly 13 of those 19 years, he had governed from the northern front. He was fighting the Marcomannic wars against the tribes across the Danube, and there was the plague. Since the year 165, a sickness carried home by Roman armies had moved through the empire in waves. The estimates are uncertain, but the dead are counted in the millions. It thinned the cities. It thinned the camps. It did not spare the frontier. Through the walls of the room comes the noise of the camp, hooves, low voices, iron on iron. This is where the empire ended, in the most literal sense. The Danube was a hard line on the map, Roman ground on one bank, the territory of the tribes on the other. Rome itself sat far to the south, more than 1,000 kilometers away. It was a small point of warmth at the bottom of the world he ruled. The most Roman man alive was dying at the rim of the Roman world. And in a plain room in that camp, far from the warm stone of Rome, a sick man reaches for a wax tablet. Not to write a law, not to write an order, but to write a note to himself. He wakes before the light is full. There is no hunger in him, only the memory of it. When the officer comes with food, he turns his face away. He will take only wine, and only if it is cut with water, and even that sits poorly in him. The officer is a young man, careful, quiet, in the way men become around the dying. He sets down the cup. He carries the morning's reports under his arm, the dispatches and the numbers, and the small business of an empire that does not pause for one sick body. Marcus listens. Even now, the machinery keeps arriving at his bed. A question about supply, a question about the cohorts to the east. He answers what he can in a voice gone thin, and the officer writes it down. On the table beside him lies a wax tablet and a bronze stylus. They are dry, untouched, since the night before. He reaches for them with a hand that has carried a sword, a seal, and the weight of the world. Now it can barely hold a pen. The wax is cool under his thumb. The stylus is light, almost nothing, and still it is heavy in the way that all small tasks become heavy at the end. He does not write yet. He holds it. He looks at the gray square of the window and the cold coming through it. The reports can wait. The cohorts can wait. He sets them aside. There is one more thing he wants to write down before the day takes him. A line meant for no one but himself. The stylus drags through the warm wax, slow, with a small, dry sound. He writes in Greek. It is not his first language, but it is the language he thinks in when he thinks about how to live. The light in the room is gray and thin. It comes through the window and lands on the wax and warms nothing. What he writes is not grand. He reminds himself of plain things, the kind a man must tell himself again and again because he keeps forgetting them. That all things pass, that the work in front of you is the only work that is yours, that the end is not an evil, only a part of the order of things, the same as birth. He stops. He reads back what he has written. A word is wrong or weak, and he smooths the wax with his thumb and tries again. This is not a man composing for an audience. This is a man arguing with himself, correcting himself, the way he has done on these tablets for years. The reminders repeat because the forgetting repeats. He has written some version of these lines 100 times in camps like this one, on nights when sleep would not come. It is not philosophy as performance. It is the daily maintenance of a soul that has to get up and rule in the morning. Then, through the wall, there are footsteps in the corridor. He knows the step. It is his son. And the conversation he has been avoiding for years can wait no longer. If you are still with me this far in, take a second and subscribe. Because here is the strange part. What you just watched him write, he never meant for you to read. He never meant for anyone to read it. How it survived at all is the strangest turn in the whole story. Commodus comes in. He is 18, broad, healthy, the opposite of the man on the bed. He is also the heir, the only living son of the many children Faustina bore. He will be emperor before the night is over. Marcus has spent his life writing about duty. Some of what he wrote, the surviving lines suggest, was the worry of a father who was not sure of his son. We do not know exactly what passed between them in that room. The sources are thin and come to us secondhand. What they tell us is plain enough. He speaks to the young man briefly. His breathing is worse now, a wet drag on every sentence, and the talk costs him. The red cloak of the empire lies over him, the deep red that once meant command. It is too large now for the body underneath. He gives Commodus the watchword for the guard, the password that the camp would use that night. It is the smallest possible act of handing over an empire. Not a crown, not a speech to the legions, a single word passed from a dying father to a living son. Then he tells him to go. Whatever he feared, whatever he hoped, he had already decided years before in the slow way that such decisions are made. The empire would go to his blood. He gives the watchword to his son and tells him to go. Then he covers his head as if to sleep. The empire has been handed over. There is nothing left to manage now but the dying. The room is nearly dark. Through the wall comes the sound of the camp going about its evening. Horses shift in the lines. Men call to one another. Somewhere a cart moves over frozen ground. It is the ordinary noise of a world that does not pause for him, and it does not pause. They bring him food once more. He refuses it once more. There is nothing he wants now from the world of the living, not bread, not wine, not company. His face has gone pale, the color drained out toward gray, the same gray as the light and the wax and the river outside. He is very still. The breathing is the only movement left, and it is slowing. He covers his head with the edge of the cloak, the gesture of a man lying down to sleep. The watchword is given. The sun is gone. The reports are answered. There is nothing left on the table but the tablet and the stylus and the line he wrote that morning in Greek. The camp does not stop. The horses do not stop. The breath, somewhere in the dark of the 17th of March, simply slows, and then it is not there. That is the morning. A sick man, a cold room, a sun, and a notebook. Now let me tell you what we got wrong about every single part of it, starting with that notebook. Decoded 1. You are reading a dead man's private diary. The book we call the Meditations is, right now, one of the most read works of philosophy on earth. People keep it by their beds, They tattoo lines from it on their arms, and not one of those lines was ever written for them. Marcus did not write a book. He wrote notes to himself, in Greek, the language he reached for when he wanted to think clearly. He gave them no public title. The closest thing we have is ta eis heauton, which means, roughly, to himself. Read them in order, and you can feel it. The same ideas come back again and again. He repeats himself. He corrects himself. He scolds himself like a man who keeps failing at something and keeps trying anyway. He never published a word of it. He almost certainly never meant anyone to read it. The most influential book in the history of Stoicism survived by accident. We are, all of us, reading his diary. Decoded 2, he died of plague, not glory. He died of plague, not glory. When we picture a great Roman emperor dying, we picture marble, a palace, maybe a noble death in battle. Marcus got none of that. He spent the last decade of his life on the Danube, fighting the Marcomannic Wars. A philosopher running a long, grinding war he took no pleasure in. And the whole time, a sickness was loose in the empire. We call it the Antonine Plague, probably smallpox, carried home by Roman soldiers from the east. It killed across the empire for years, with the dead counted, by most estimates, in the millions. It moved through the frontier camps in waves, and it most likely killed him. There was no glorious last stand. The man whose notebook teaches calm in the face of death died of an epidemic in the cold, at the edge of the world he governed. He had to practice exactly what he preached, alone. Decoded 3. He broke the system that made Rome work. You may know Commodus from the film Gladiator, so let's clear one thing up first. Marcus was not murdered by his son. That is fiction. He died of disease, the way we just described. But here is the part the film gets right by accident. Commodus really was a disaster. And the deeper question is, why Rome let him happen? For most of a century, the good emperors had each chosen a successor and adopted him, picking the best man they could find rather than the nearest blood. Trajan, Hadrian, Antoninus, Marcus himself, every one of them an adopted heir. The system worked because merit, not birth, picked the ruler. Marcus ended it. He handed Rome to his own son. Many historians mark that single choice as the start of the long Roman decline. The man who wrote more than anyone about duty made the largest succession decision of his age and, by most accounts, got it badly wrong. The room is empty now. They have taken the body away, and the camp has already turned back to its work because a camp on a frontier cannot afford to grieve for long. The tablet is still on the table. The stylus lies across it where a hand set it down. The wax holds the last line he wrote in Greek, and the gray light from the window moves slowly across the letters. He covered his head and died, far from Rome, of a sickness he could not name. He did not know what would become of the notebook on his table. He did not know that the private one, the one in Greek, the one he wrote only for himself, would outlast the empire he gave his son. It would outlast the city. It would outlast every emperor who came after. 18 centuries later, more people would read his diary than ever read it in his own tongue. He taught the world how to die. And then, alone, in a cold room at the edge of everything, he had to do it himself. The light flattens on the wax. The last line holds, and then the room is only gray.